The planet Calvaris was burning. Smoke rose from the forests, and the distant mountains were already blackened by fire. The Valari soldiers were struggling to hold the line against the invading forces. They were losing men faster than they could replace them, and their weapons were barely enough to hold the attackers at bay. Commander Lysira stood on the ridge, looking down at the battlefield. Her sharp green eyes scanned the chaos. The air smelled of ash and oil, and the wind carried the cries of the wounded. Every time she looked around, she saw Valari soldiers falling, either to enemy fire or to the harsh wildlife that had been disturbed by the battle. She had sent countless messages for reinforcements. The core worlds of the Alliance had always promised support in times of crisis. Yet, now, when Calvaris was on the edge of collapse, she had received no fleets, no elite troops, and no advanced weapons. Instead, the Alliance Command had sent a single message. It read, "Help is on the way. A small human squad is en route." Lysira felt her jaw tighten. Humans. They were barely involved in the Alliance's military operations, and many Valari believed them weak, untested, and reckless. But still, she had no choice. The battle was far from over. Hours later, a distant shape appeared in the sky. The Valari soldiers squinted, trying to make out the object through the haze of smoke and dust. It was a dropship. Small but fast, descending with precision. The Valari troops whispered among themselves, some in disbelief, some in hope. Lysira's heart pounded in her chest. When the ship landed with a soft thud on the rough ground, 5 humans stepped out. The first to step onto the scorched earth was Captain Oliver Grant. He was tall, with short brown hair and calm eyes that seemed to measure everything at once. He carried a small pack and wore armor that looked worn but well-maintained. Next came Sergeant Lily Morgan, moving with light, careful steps. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical braid, and her eyes flickered with sharp attention. Private Adam Cole followed, grinning a little as he stretched his arms. Private Nina Rogers moved silently, scanning the area as if she already knew the land. Finally, Combat Engineer Ethan Brooks came out, carrying tools and equipment that looked like they could build or destroy anything. The Valari soldiers could not hide their surprise. These humans were small in number, and they looked almost relaxed, almost as if they were stepping out for a stroll rather than preparing for a deadly battle. Lysira took a deep breath. She had expected elite soldiers from the core worlds, trained in Valari combat tactics. Instead, she saw 5 humans, calm and quiet, who looked ready for anything. Captain Oliver approached Lysira with a slow, steady walk. "Commander Lysira?" he asked in clear Valari common. His voice was confident, calm, and steady. "I am Captain Grant. We received your message. Can you brief us on the situation?" Lysira blinked. His calm tone irritated her at first. There were explosions nearby, fires burning, soldiers dying, and he sounded polite. She swallowed her irritation. "Yes. Follow me," she said, trying to maintain authority. The humans followed without hesitation. They observed everything with sharp eyes, asking a few questions quietly. When they entered the command tent, Lysira began to explain the situation. Enemy forces had breached the northern ridge and were moving toward the base. The Valari troops were running low on ammunition. Several supply depots had already fallen. Oliver listened carefully, nodding occasionally. "Understood. How many active soldiers remain?" he asked. Lysira answered, naming numbers that made her stomach twist. She expected disbelief, maybe even panic, but Oliver simply nodded again. "We can work with that," he said calmly. The Valari officers whispered among themselves. "Who are these humans?" one asked. "Do they know what they are doing?" Eh? Lysira did not answer. She was still not sure herself. She led the humans outside to observe the battlefield. She thought they might hesitate, but none of them did. They checked their weapons and armor with quiet focus. Ethan tapped on some metal panels, making small adjustments as he spoke softly to himself. Nina moved to the edge of the ridge, scanning the terrain. Adam picked up a fallen rifle, examined it, and grinned. Lily crouched near a group of Valari soldiers, helping them adjust their aim. The humans' actions drew confused and anxious stares from the Valari soldiers. No hesitation. No fear. No panic. Just focus, skill, and a strange confidence that the Valari had never seen before. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the battlefield, Lysira watched as the humans prepared to move. "We should start with a patrol," Oliver said. "We need to understand where the enemy is weakest, where their supply lines are." Lysira felt her lips tighten. These humans, she realized, were thinking beyond the immediate firefight. They were strategizing, analyzing, and moving calmly in a situation that had the Valari soldiers panicked. "Very well," she said. The humans and Valari troops moved through the scorched forest. The enemy had left traps and ambushes, expecting the Valari to be clumsy or fearful. But the humans moved with precision. Nina spotted a tripwire before anyone else could, signaling the Valari soldiers to avoid it. Ethan found an unstable supply cache and warned everyone to stay clear. Adam rushed forward, drawing fire, then rolled and returned unharmed, laughing lightly at the enemy's confusion. Lily coordinated the small group, giving orders clearly and effectively, moving with speed and care. Oliver stayed in the center, directing everyone with calm authority. By the time they returned to the base, the Valari soldiers' doubt was replaced with awe. The humans had walked into danger and returned unscathed. Lysira felt something shift inside her. These soldiers, she realized, were not weak. They were different, and they were dangerous in ways the Valari had never imagined. That night, around the fire in the command tent, the humans sat quietly, repairing weapons and armor. They spoke in calm, simple words, sharing advice and strategies with the Valari soldiers. Adam told a story about hunting on Earth, making the Valari laugh. Lily and Nina trained a few soldiers in quick reaction drills. Ethan drew simple diagrams on the ground, explaining how to set traps using minimal materials. Oliver simply observed, occasionally giving short, sharp instructions that everyone obeyed without question. Lysira could not sleep that night. She stared at the stars through the opening of the tent. She thought about the humans, their strange confidence, their skill, and their calmness in the face of death. She realized something she had never thought before. Maybe humanity was not weak. Maybe humans, these so-called Deathworlders, were exactly what Kelvaris needed. By dawn, the humans were already preparing for the next patrol. They moved silently through the trees, scanning the horizon and testing the enemy's defenses. Every step they took seemed calculated, fearless, and precise. Lysira followed them at a distance, still not fully understanding how these humans could be so unafraid. As the day progressed, small victories began to accumulate. The humans spotted enemy patrols before they could attack, saved Valari soldiers from hidden traps, and recovered important supplies. The Valari troops began to follow their lead, inspired by their courage and skill. Lysira realized that for the first time in this desperate war, hope was returning. She finally understood why the core worlds had called them humans. Not because they were untrained or weak, but because they were different. They survived where others could not. They thrived in harsh environments, fought with courage that bordered on recklessness, and had a calm, unshakable focus in battle. For the first time, Lysira felt a spark of confidence. The battle was not over, but with the humans by their side, maybe Kelvaris could survive. And maybe, just maybe, these Deathworlders were exactly the reinforcements the Valari had been waiting for. The sun rose higher, painting the battlefield in orange and red. Smoke still filled the air, but for the first time, Lysira saw movement among her soldiers that was not fear. They were learning, following, and trusting. The humans had arrived. Small in number, but larger in presence than anyone could have imagined. Lysira watched as Oliver led his team through the trees, their movements fluid, confident, and deadly in silence. She realized that this was not just another squad sent to help. This was a force that could change everything. And as the wind carried the distant sounds of the enemy, she whispered to herself, almost in awe, "Perhaps we are not alone after all." The humans moved with calm precision through the forest. Every step was careful, every movement purposeful. The Valari soldiers followed, some reluctantly, some with hope sparking in their hearts. The enemy forces on Kelvaris were ruthless, skilled, and numerous. They had expected easy prey when they attacked the Valari outposts. But these humans were unlike anything they had seen before. Captain Oliver Grant led the patrol at the front. His eyes scanned every shadow, every tree, and every movement in the distance. He paused when he spotted footprints in the soft soil, tracking them silently. Lily Morgan moved beside him, her hand resting lightly on her weapon. She noticed small details the Valari soldiers missed. Broken branches, disturbed dirt, faint traces of heat. Adam Cole followed a few steps behind, grinning but alert. He picked up a rock and threw it, testing the enemy's reactions. Nina Rogers stayed near the back, watching for threats and warning the team when something felt off. Ethan Brooks carried a small pack of tools, occasionally stopping to examine traps or weaknesses in the terrain. The Valari soldiers whispered to each other, shocked at how natural the humans seemed in danger. "How can they move like this?" one asked. "They are so small. And yet, they are everywhere at once." Oliver crouched low, pointing ahead. "Enemy patrol. 10 meters to the east." Quietly. His tone was calm, almost casual. The humans spread out, using the trees as cover. Lily signaled to Adam and Nina. They moved quickly, silently, surrounding the small enemy group before anyone could react. A single sound broke the tension. A suppressed shot. One of the Valari soldiers gasped. The enemy patrol was down before it knew what had hit them. Adam picked up a fallen weapon and handed it to a nearby Valari soldier. "Try to keep up," he said with a smirk. The Valari were amazed. In every corner of the battlefield, the humans seemed to appear exactly where they were needed. The enemy thought they were surrounded by ghosts. They could not predict the humans' movements, their timing, or their courage. Where the Valari were cautious, the humans were daring. Where the Valari hesitated, the humans acted with precision and speed. By midday, the small patrol had gathered critical information. They knew the enemy's positions, weak points in their defenses, and even where supply convoys were traveling. Ethan had marked traps for the Valari to avoid, and Lily had taught small groups how to move without being seen. Adam and Nina had eliminated isolated enemies before they could call for reinforcements. Commander Lysira watched from the ridge as the humans returned to the base. They carried no heavy weapons, no large machines, just their skill, their knowledge, and their will. She could see the change in her soldiers. Fear was replaced with hope. Confusion was replaced with trust. The humans were not just soldiers. They were teachers, guides, and warriors, all at once. That evening, the humans gathered around the fire in the command tent. They spoke quietly, planning the next move. Oliver outlined a strategy to use small teams to hit the enemy where they were weakest. Ethan suggested building traps using scraps from the battlefield. Lily and Nina trained groups of Valari soldiers in stealth and speed. Adam joked with the troops, keeping morale high. Lysira realized that the humans were not just brave, they were smart. They thought ahead, planned carefully, and moved with the kind of instinct that came from experience in harsh environments. They were not reckless. They were efficient. The following morning, the humans led a larger patrol. The Valari had begun to trust them completely. The humans divided into teams, each with a Valari squad, and moved quietly through the forests surrounding the base. The enemy, confident in their numbers, had set traps and ambushes, but the humans spotted them easily. Ethan disarmed several traps with quick hands, showing the Valari exactly how to avoid danger. Lily led her team past a patrol of enemy scouts, eliminating them without alerting anyone else. Adam and Nina scouted ahead, reporting enemy positions and weaknesses. Oliver coordinated the entire operation, moving like a shadow, appearing exactly where needed, and disappearing before the enemy could react. By nightfall, the humans had captured enemy weapons, supplies, and important intelligence. They returned to the base, smiling but calm, as if it had been a normal day. The Valari soldiers followed, exhausted, but inspired. They began to see that these humans were different. These were not just fighters. They were Deathworlders, humans who had survived conditions far harsher than anything Kelvaris could offer. Lysira approached Oliver as he inspected a captured weapon. "Captain Grant," she said carefully, "your methods, they are extraordinary. Where do you learn this?" "Well, time. Weapon." Oliver looked up, his eyes calm. "On Earth," he said simply, "we learn to survive first. Everything else comes after." Lysira frowned. She did not understand all of it. Earth was a distant, almost legendary place in the Alliance. She had heard stories of humans surviving deadly planets, of their toughness, their courage, and their stubborn will to fight. But seeing it in action was different. It was real. It was undeniable. Over the next few days, the humans led several operations. They moved through forests, rivers, and mountains, striking the enemy where they least expected it. They recovered supplies, saved trapped soldiers, and eliminated key enemy leaders. Every time, the Valari soldiers followed their lead, learning new techniques, gaining confidence, and slowly changing from desperate fighters to skilled warriors. Ethan's traps became famous among the troops. He used broken machinery, fuel, and scrap metal to create dangerous surprises for the enemy. Adam's bold actions became legendary. He would rush into danger, drawing fire, and always come back unscathed. Lily and Nina's training improved the Valari squads dramatically. Soldiers who had once been terrified could now move silently, strike quickly, and survive against overwhelming odds. One afternoon, as the sun burned through the thick clouds, Oliver led a small team to scout an enemy supply convoy. The convoy was heavily guarded, moving through a narrow canyon. Valari soldiers would have been too cautious to attempt an attack. But the humans had a plan. Ethan quickly set up traps along the canyon, disguised as rocks and fallen trees. Lily and Nina positioned themselves on high ground, ready to fire. Adam led the charge, sprinting across open ground to draw attention. Oliver coordinated everyone, giving precise instructions. The ambush was a success. The enemy was caught off guard. Weapons and supplies were captured, and the Valari soldiers learned the humans' methods firsthand. By the time the mission was over, the Valari soldiers were cheering. For the first time, they felt they could win. Lysira watched the team return. She had never seen soldiers so small in number inspire such hope and fearlessness. She realized that the humans were more than reinforcements. They were a force that could turn the tide of the war. That night, Lysira stood on the ridge, looking out over the battlefield. Fires still burned, and the enemy had regrouped, but she no longer felt despair. The humans had shown her what was possible. They had taught her soldiers to survive, fight, and even thrive under pressure. They were not just brave. They were unstoppable in ways she could not fully explain. The humans, meanwhile, sat quietly in the command tent, checking their equipment and planning the next moves. They did not boast. They did not demand attention. They simply prepared. Adam joked softly with a Valari soldier about a missed shot, making him laugh. Lily adjusted the armor of a young Valari recruit. Nina inspected the perimeter for signs of enemy activity. Ethan tinkered with a small device, testing it for a new trap. Oliver studied maps, marking enemy positions, supply routes, and weak points. Lysira realized that the human strength was not in their weapons or numbers. It was in their mind, their skill, and their willingness to face danger head-on. They were Deathworlders, born of harsh worlds, hardened by conditions far worse than Kelvaris. They had faced worse than this and survived. That was why they could teach the Valari to survive now. As dawn approached again, the humans prepared for another patrol. This time, Lysira decided to accompany them. She wanted to see, firsthand, how they worked, how they thought, and how they moved in battle. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the scarred land. The humans moved forward, calm, precise, and deadly. The Valari followed, learning, observing, and slowly understanding the meaning of true courage. By the time they returned, Lysira felt a spark of pride she had not felt in weeks. The humans had changed everything. They were not just soldiers. They were hope. They were teachers. They were Deathworlders. And for the first time, she truly believed that Kelvaris might survive the war. The morning was quiet, but Lysira knew it would not stay that way. The enemy forces were massing beyond the ridges, preparing for a full assault on the Valari base. The Valari soldiers were tense, checking weapons and pacing nervously. The humans, however, moved with calm focus. They did not rush. They did not panic. They prepared with precision. And that steadiness was starting to influence the Valari. Captain Oliver Grant walked among the troops, examining their formations. He stopped to adjust a Valari soldier's armor. "Keep your weapon ready, but don't waste energy," he said. "Focus. Observe. Move only when needed." Lily Morgan moved beside him, checking a group of soldiers she had trained in stealth tactics. She crouched and whispered instructions, showing them how to stay hidden, move quickly, and attack with precision. Adam Cole tested the range of Valari weapons, adjusting the aim and making sure the soldiers knew how to use them efficiently. Nina Rogers moved silently around the perimeter, spotting weaknesses in the base defenses that no Valari had noticed. Ethan Brooks tinkered with the supply lines and traps, reinforcing weak points and improvising defenses with limited materials. Lysira watched them in amazement. The humans were not just teaching, they were transforming the Valari soldiers into an effective fighting force. She felt a spark of hope she had not felt in weeks. Oliver called the small group together. "The enemy will come from 3 main directions. We can't match their numbers in a straight fight. We will use traps, ambushes, and focused attacks to slow them down. Keep your wits, follow instructions, stay alive." Lysira nodded, and the Valari soldiers prepared to follow his lead. She could see their nervousness melting into determination. The humans' confidence was infectious. As the sun climbed higher, the first enemy scouts appeared. They were fast, armed, and confident. Many Valari would have panicked, but the humans reacted instantly. Nina spotted the scouts first, whispering a warning to Lily. Lily signaled Adam and Ethan. Traps had been set along the path. When the enemy scouts stepped forward, a series of controlled explosions and hidden spikes blocked their advance. The scouts stumbled, shouted, and retreated. Adam sprinted ahead, drawing fire. But he moved with perfect agility. He rolled, ducked, and returned to safety. The Valari soldiers followed the humans' example, moving carefully, shooting accurately, and taking cover efficiently. Oliver stayed at the center, calling out instructions, watching every move. By midday, the humans and Valari had repelled the first wave without losing a single soldier. Lysira felt her chest swell with pride. The humans had done more than fight. They had taught her soldiers how to survive and fight smart. The main enemy forces arrived in the late afternoon. They came in numbers far greater than the Valari could match. Massive machines rumbled through the fields. Infantry poured from armored transports. The ground shook under the weight of their advance. Many Valari soldiers froze, unsure how to respond to such overwhelming force. Oliver did not flinch. He moved calmly through the ranks, checking weapons, giving instructions, and organizing defenses. Lily and Nina positioned sharpshooters on high ground. Adam and Ethan worked to set traps, explosive charges, and obstacles along the expected enemy paths. The Valari followed their lead, moving with new confidence. When the first wave struck, the humans fought like storms. Oliver directed the defense from the center, moving between groups, checking lines, and giving orders. Lily fired from high ground, taking out enemy officers with deadly accuracy. Nina moved silently along the perimeter, eliminating threats before they could reach the base. Adam ran across open ground to distract the enemy, drawing fire away from the Valari soldiers. Ethan triggered traps, blowing up armored vehicles and cutting supply lines. The Valari soldiers began to understand what they had learned. They no longer panicked. They no longer hesitated. They moved in coordinated strikes. Using the humans' methods, traps, ambushes, and flanking attacks turned the battlefield in their favor. The enemy, confident in their numbers, was forced to retreat in confusion again and again. Lysira watched as Oliver and his team moved through the chaos with calm precision. He was not reckless. He was calculated. Every move had purpose. Lily and Nina acted like shadows, striking with deadly timing. Adam's boldness inspired the Valari soldiers to act without fear. Ethan's traps and devices wreaked havoc on the enemy lines. By the time the sun began to set, the enemy had suffered massive losses. Their vehicles were destroyed, their leaders eliminated, and their infantry demoralized. The Valari base had held, almost entirely because of the humans. Lysira walked among the soldiers, speaking quietly with a few. "How did you survive that?" asked one young soldier, still trembling. Oliver smiled calmly. "We adapt. We learn. We survive. That is what humans do. You can do it too, if you trust yourselves." The Valari soldiers looked at him with a mix of awe and disbelief. Lysira realized that the humans' strength was not just in fighting, it was in teaching, leading, and inspiring. That night, the humans checked equipment, repaired weapons, and prepared for the next day. They did not celebrate. They did not boast. They simply worked. Lily taught the Valari soldiers to move quietly and aim quickly. Nina showed them how to watch and read the enemy's movements. Adam trained small squads in bold, risky maneuvers. Ethan created more traps and defenses. Oliver studied maps, predicting where the enemy might strike next. Lysira felt a sense of relief. The humans had done more than hold the line, they had changed everything. The Valari soldiers were no longer desperate. They were ready. They were confident. They were beginning to believe in victory. The following day, the humans led a counterattack. Small squads, guided by Oliver, Lily, Nina, Adam, and Ethan, moved through forests, ridges, and rivers. They struck enemy supply lines, destroyed vehicles, and eliminated leaders. Every move was calculated. Every action had purpose. The Valari soldiers followed, learning to fight like humans. By the afternoon, enemy morale had begun to collapse. They had expected to crush the Valari base in days, but now they were retreating in confusion. Oliver directed the attacks with calm efficiency, ensuring minimal losses and maximum impact. Lily and Nina coordinated sharpshooters and small strike teams. Adam led daring maneuvers, forcing the enemy to divide their forces. Ethan set traps along retreat paths, slowing the enemy's escape. Lysira watched the battlefield from the ridge, She had never seen such skill, courage, and coordination from any soldiers before. The humans were remarkable. The Valari were learning from them, growing stronger with each battle. As night fell, the humans returned to the base. The Valari soldiers cheered, exhausted but inspired. Lysira approached Oliver. "You have done more than we could ever imagine," she said. Oliver shook his head. "We did what needed to be done. Your soldiers fought well too. They just needed guidance." Lysira nodded, understanding for the first time. The humans were not just fighters. They were leaders, teachers, and examples of what true courage looked like. They had turned a desperate, losing army into a fighting force that could survive, adapt, and strike back. The base was quiet that night, but Lysira knew it would not stay that way. The enemy would return, but she no longer feared. With humans by their side, the Valari soldiers were ready. They had learned to fight smart, move fast, and survive against overwhelming odds. They had learned what it meant to be Deathworlders. As dawn approached, Oliver gathered his team. "Tomorrow, we continue. The enemy will not give up easily. We need to be ready. Focus, move, and fight smart." Lysira looked at the humans, her respect growing with every word. They had changed the battlefield, changed the Valari soldiers, and given hope where there had been none. She realized that these humans were not just reinforcements, they were the difference between defeat and survival. The fire of Kelvaris still burned, and the enemy forces still threatened. But for the first time in weeks, Lysira felt certain that victory was possible. The humans had shown her the way. They were calm, skilled, fearless, and clever. They were Deathworlders, and they were unstoppable.